Welcome back to Up North at 4, and joining me now, a very special guest. It's Pamela Fullerton, a Wisconsin native. You were at one point a lawyer, a judge. You've worn many hats, and now you wear the hat, that of an author.
Yes, I do.
And thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Pamela, I gotta ask you, writing, how did this begin? When did that start for you?
Well, for heaven's sakes, I've been writing my entire life, although it used to be findings of fact, conclusions of law, legal briefs, employee handbooks. And
all the fun stuff, right? Of
all
course.
The fun stuff.
Yeah.
And it is a real pleasure to be writing the things that are coming out of my head instead.
Because when I was growing up, you know, going through school, I liked writing on the side, but then writing for a paper or for school or for a project, I could never bring myself to do it. Were you kind of the same way, or was it just you loved it no matter what it was?
Are you talking procrastination or?
Yes,
yeah.
You caught me there, yeah.
In actuality, I used to be a procrastinator when it was a legal brief that was 65, 80 pages long, and half of it was cites for federal law journals or whatever. This is different. This is the stuff that inspires you every single moment you're writing it, because you yourself want to know where the story's going. And you want to know how the characters develop. And so it's fun. And it kind of takes over your life in a way, because these stories will wake you up in the middle of the night when you have an inspiration. So it is something that I really, really love doing.
I was going to ask you, how many times have you woken up either in the middle of the night or in the morning and then had to like grab a piece of paper and like, I just had an idea? Does that happen?
It happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But the notes are illegible. You know, you're trying to do them in the dark so you don't wake up the dogs or you don't wake up the other people, you know. And my handwriting's bad anyway, having been a judge, you know, because they make you sign every single document. You can't even use a rubber stamp. So I have terrible handwriting, but...
And of course, you wake up then in the morning and you're like, what the heck did I just write? What's going on here?
Well, I try to decipher them because, believe me, I can't afford to lose one inspiration, so...
Pamela, I'm curious though for you, because you mentioned like you've been writing your entire life, but of course a lot of that was in the context of work, right? Doing legal stuff.
Right.
And eventually you retired from that and decided to write for fun, or at least write for what you considered fun. So there was clearly a love of writing there.
Yes.
Did that start as a kid? Was that through reading a lot and you just decided to take up writing as a hobby? Where did that begin?
I think it begins with creating children who are readers. My parents read to us.
Okay.
And in addition to reading to us, they always told us stories, the great stories about historical figures or mythology or legend. And so we were always discussing stories and talking to one another. And of course, I've got 15 brothers and sisters, and so we were our own tribe, basically. And we always told stories to one another too. Either that or got one another in trouble with terrible adventures that if my parents had known, they would have died of heart attack. But no, storytelling, I think, stems from being a reader and being exposed to good storytelling.
And so here you are, all these years later, and you mentioned before a lot of those stories and books that you read and were read to as a child came with historical figures or mythology. So I'm curious, and I'm sure people at home want to know, what is your style? What's your go-to when it comes to writing, Pamela?
Well, I'm not sure I understand exactly what you mean by style. If you mean genre...
yeah, genre would have been the better word.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
this
is, the latest one is an anthology, and so these are short stories. And I sometimes think that short stories are harder to write than a novel, because you really have to hook your reader very, very quickly, and you have to get them to like something about your character. Whereas in a novel, you can develop it over chapters and pages of material. This, you only get a few words to do it in. And I kind of like that the mental gymnastics that are involved in that.
I mean, what do they always say? First impressions are the most important. And
I think that's true.
When you're writing a short story and someone's reading it for the first time, Gotta hook them right away. So I want to talk more about this project, Red Road Redemption, and I want to talk about some other projects you got either in the works or some that you've completed. You mind sticking around with me for a while?
All right, I sure will.
I'm going to be right back on Up North at 4. Stick with us. Welcome back to Up North at 4. We are joined by Pamela Fullerton, who is a Wisconsin-based author, and we're here to talk about her latest project, Red Road Redemption, which, like you said before, it is a collection of short stories, which, you know, take it from me, I'm not a writer myself, so I would have assumed writing a short story, come on, that's easy. I could easily pump that out, but you're telling me, no, this is almost more difficult than writing a novel because you need to get that hook right away. So I'm curious, for your sake, Pamela, how do you go about writing numerous short stories and making sure they're all good? How do you kind of stay on task?
I would call it inspiration and revision and some hard work, because there really is. I mean, I've gotten more headaches over short stories than I ever have baling hay or riding a horse or even sitting in a courtroom as a judge. Short story writing requires that you synthesize every single element of the story into the briefest amount of space possible, and that you use just the right details, just the right words to convey exactly what it is you want to convey to your reader. The first story I ever wrote that somebody said, oh, hey, you ought to put this in a literary competition. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Right.
So I took 3 of the stories that I had written and I put them in the literary competition, which is the oldest one in Wisconsin, called the Jade Ring. Well, there were about 500 entries, and my stories won first, second, and third, which they changed the rules the next year.
Got the clean sweep, and they're like, I don't know.
It's a trifecta.
There we go.
Since I have resources at the farm. But I mean, that was very encouraging, and so I began to write more of them.
I would imagine. I'm sure there's a certain point, too, where you think, okay, this person, they're just saying that to be nice, that I should enter my story. But once you win awards and you start to get some positive feedback from people who are real, you know, critics, that's got to feel pretty cool, right?
That, and having publishers say, we want to publish this, is a very nice feeling.
Of course. And so tell me a little bit about this book, though, Red Road Redemption. I know it's a collection. Is there a common theme throughout? What is sort of the inspiration, the idea behind it?
I think it's in the title. It's those iconic red gravel roads, those red granite roads that snake through central Wisconsin. And redemption isn't redemption maybe in the sense of religious redemption, but those roads join people, and they can lead to a redemption of individualism or dignity, or the capacity to live life on your own terms. It isn't just stories about human beings, though, even though a lot of the human beings in these stories were living a life that was going extinct even as they were living it, small farmers and small businessmen in rural communities. But it's also about a lot of the animals that are located in these rural areas along those red roads. So
really tapping into your roots, it sounds like a little bit, right?
A little bit, yes.
Little bit. And of course, that book is now available. It's on Amazon. It's in several
Barnes and
bookstores.
Nobles, Yankees bookstore in Wausau. It's available anywhere. Yeah.
Love it. And the feedback has been very positive,
It's been extraordinary.
I love it. And what other projects have you been working on?
Well, right now I am co-producer of a documentary which is going to be released on Veterans Day of this year. It is called Honor in the Air. It is about one of Wisconsin's greatest and unsung military heroes, a Vietnam helicopter pilot who is the most decorated helicopter pilot in the history of the military. And he is a son of Wisconsin, too, so we need to know more about our heroes here. And I also have 2 books with publishers right now. One of them is the first of a series of children's stories called The Unicorns in the Woods, and the other is a novel about Wisconsin called Simply Marathon.
Simply Marathon. Do you ever get a break, Pamela, from all these projects you're working on? You seem like an incredibly busy woman, but it's
fun. It is what I love doing.
I love it. I love hearing just your creative process and learning a little bit about what inspires you and pushes you to keep writing. And I wish you the best of luck in this.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
It's been a pleasure. And of course, people at home, check out the book. You can find it in numerous bookstores, online, and stay up to date with what Pamela's doing, because apparently she's doing everything under the sun, it sounds like, right?
I certainly am trying.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break on Up North. We'll be back after this.